Taoiseach, we are on the verge of a major public transport strike with Bus Eireann. And it seems what has transpired is that over the last 2 years, the last government sat on their hands, and despite various plans going to the Department of Transport and to the NTA, nothing happened. Why? Because a general election was imminent in 2016 and nobody wanted to deal with the issues. And then in the aftermath of the election, a clear out of the old management and a very aggressive approach has now developed. An aggressive approach which essentially is putting the onus entirely on workers' terms, pay and conditions. And essentially, in my view, it's conflict-driven. That is the strategy. And the objective is to get the average bus driver's wages down to about 32 to 33,000 euros in one fell swoop, along with redundancies and other efficiencies. In other words, the workers have to bear the entire brunt of the 12 million being sought in savings and identified by the company itself. The management's position at the LRC, for example, its behaviour was very provocative indeed on Monday. The ideological position of Fine Gael is aligned to this strategy, as is that of the Minister, who, after all, hails from the same stable. So he's hiding, and his behaviour is classic Pontius Pilate. He's hiding behind the industrial relations fig leaf, not engaging, but privately he's very comfortable with what's going on here in terms of what is the undermining of a public transport company and an all-out assault on terms and conditions of the workers. Now, there has to be efficiency, Taoiseach. There has to be reforms. I accept and I agree with that. But I don't agree with a race to the bottom, which is what is actually going on. And I don't agree with the undermining of an important state bus company. Because I did ask you the last time what your position on that was, and you equivocated on the idea of supporting and maintaining a state transport company like Bus Eireann. It's also interesting to note, Taoiseach, that the Lewis dispute got sorted. Dublin bus dispute got sorted. Is that because it's Dublin-based? To hell with the regions. To hell with rural Ireland. Let chaos prevail. That is the message that has been sent in the contrasting way that the various disputes have been dealt with. And I think the hands-off approach of Minister Ross is ensuring that that occurs. And the basic question I've put to you, Taoiseach, why is it not possible for Minister Ross and the Department of Transport to engage with the National Transport Authority, the NTA, and with Bus Eireann management and unions to work out the policy implications and issues that could contribute to a resolution of this particular dispute? And remember, the PSO, the Public Service Subvention, has been reduced from about 45 million in 2010 to 36 million in 2016, and the free travel contribution per passenger is about 486 on the expressway, whilst it's 1178 is the actual average fare on the expressway. So the policy matters here, Taoiseach, and it's time for the Minister to engage on those policy issues with all of the stakeholders.
Taoiseach. Thank you, Deputy Martin. This is a very disappointing situation that talks have broken down, and potentially there is a catastrophic situation here for hundreds of thousands of public passengers if this were to spread to throughout the company. The problem is on the expressway service, which is a commercial service which is not subsidised. I'd point out to you that the NTA at the Committee on Transport today is focusing on the financial situation of Bus Eireann. 81% of the passengers carried by Bus Eireann are on routes that are subsidised under the PSO contract that the company has with the NTA. And these services, Ciancora, are fully remunerated by the NTA. And subvention for the PSO services by the NTA increased from 34 million in 2014 to 40 million in 2016, actually increased. No equivocation, Deputy Martin, about supporting a public transport system like we have with Bus Eireann, carrying hundreds of thousands of passengers. The difficulty lies with the commercial expressway business, and that has to be addressed for the sake both of the workforce in Bus Eireann, for the drivers and those who maintain the buses, but also for the travelling public. The situation, insofar as Minister Ross's activity is concerned, that he is very anxious that the machinery of the state would be used, and all the other strikes that you've mentioned have been settled around that table, as this one will be, and can be too. And the Minister has been in touch with the Minister for Social Protection in respect of the current funding levels for the scheme of subvention that's operated, which carries 81% of the passengers. And as I said yesterday, the rumours of taking away the free travel system were completely and utterly false. So there's going to be some further intense, difficult, complicated discussions here before this is resolved, and it's going to require a Cancola direct engagement one way or the other with the management and the unions. And the issues that we have seen reported in recent days highlight the internal focus of the problems of that the company faces. My understanding is that the 3 routes that were mentioned were for discussion, that no decision has been made here. Obviously, one to Derry, one to Westport from Athlone and one to Clonmel. They're important routes. NTA have already pointed out that in the event that discussions continue and that changes are made to the expressway service, that they will step in and provide connectivity for the public in those areas that would be affected by any change in the expressway service by Bus Eireann. So I do hope that this matter can be sorted out in the same way as all others. Complicated, yes. Tension-filled, yes. Difficult, yes. But as you rightly point out, so many other awkward cases have been dealt with and settled through the machinery of the state. And I do hope that at this late stage, that union and management can get together again and work with it. Insofar as Minister is concerned, he's very anxious that would happen, and is focusing on the public service end of any changes that might happen here.
Deputy Martin.
The months before the last general election, plans were submitted to the Department of Transport. But the attitude was, we want nothing that might cause any difficulty or conflict in advance of the election. That happened, Taoiseach. There was a political hands-off before the election. Don't cause any hassle, don't have any difficult decisions. And then in the aftermath of the election, what happens is, in one fell swoop, we're taking a sledgehammer to workers' terms and conditions. That's exactly what has happened here, Taoiseach, and is happening. And it seems to me it's a conflict-driven approach, if you just look at all of what's happened over the last month or so. And you say that the Minister for Transport is in touch with the Minister for Social Protection, but that's a meaningless phrase. What does that mean? The issue there is that the average contribution per passenger on the expressway from Social Protection is €4.86, whereas the actual fare average is about €11.78. So clearly there's a huge gap there, and there's a contribution that could be made. There are also avenues to be explored under the PSO obligations in terms of some of the routes. But the changes that are now being demanded are far more than just applicable to the expressway service. They're more fundamental and wide-ranging than that, Taoiseach. And I think the Minister, deliberately in my view, because of his ideological disposition to all of this, has stood back. The other disputes were solved because, of course, it was an upward trajectory in terms of pay and conditions. This company, and of course it happens to serve regional and rural Ireland, and the attitude seems to be it's something that we can live with in terms of allowing chaos to prevail. So I would urge you, Taoiseach, that all the stakeholders get together to look at the policy issues first before the IR issues, so that there's a proper basis for the IR issues, the industrial relations issues, that get resolved. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Martin. Well, I'd remind you that the Minister for Rural Development and Rural Economic Potential being achieved published the coordinated approach to rural development quite recently down in Ballymahon, and part of that obviously deals with rural transport and services for people. So people, those who avail of services under the public end of Bus Eireann can rest assured that there is no threat to their services, and the correspondence between the Minister for Transport and the Department of Social Protection, because Transport are looking at the funding issue and the implications of public transport operators, and that's why NTA have already given many indications of their capacity to step in there the Minister quite rightly is looking at the funding arrangements in the interest of making sure that nobody on the public service end of the Bus Eireann lose out on any of their services, and they can rest assured of that. The problem remains, Deputy Martin, in respect of the expressway service, and that's where the nub of this issue is. And I do hope that the union and management can sit down and talk it out. You yourself have pointed out that other very awkward cases have been dealt with. Finally, I'd make the point here that Minister Donoghue was dealing with transport before the last election, and he, above any other minister, was intensely interested and involved. And it was not a case of hands off from not wanting to deal with problems. There's no point in letting it fester. The opportunity to deal with it is still there, and it's going to be settled around the table of negotiation between union and management.